Welcome everyone to this episode of your Freedom Hub's Free Market Cash Patient. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, along with Charles Frohman. We are being sponsored by For the Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom, so we definitely appreciate them participating. And we are the Disruptors Intersection, and tonight is absolutely no exception to that rule. In case you've not noticed, there's a problem. And this encapsulates it quite well. So it's all about us and doctors doing an end around to solve the dilemma and not rely on others. And again, we got to remember who we're going to listen to. We're going to listen to our own advice and learn from a variety of people, or are we going to just listen to a bunch of talking heads that are trying to dictate where we should go based on their own pretenses, or who knows what their ulterior motives may be? To facilitate this, we are working in a couple capacities. We're utilizing a special app that allows you to get direct connections to doctors. We've got some stuff set up for that purpose, so you'll want to come and explore the website. We are archiving all of these, so we will want to send you off to the website. We'll take a detour in a minute. We are also featuring a plan tonight. This will be the link. We'll have that in the credits. You'll come back and we'll talk about that subsequently. But in the meantime, let's take a quick detour. The website itself has an awful lot of really interesting drop downs here to investigate. One of the important ones is this area here under the main tab where we have the webinars, but very importantly, the continuing the conversation. Because after we have a speaker, usually there's a lot of activity that's required afterward, ways you can participate, follow that person. So no different than tonight, we're going to have the ability for you to follow up with these people after the fact, which you'll really appreciate. Now, we also have people that are out kind of fighting for us, as it were. So in that regard, we definitely want to focus on the fact that there are a variety of organizations trying to help us along in a good way. And these are a lot of the immediate problems that are happening where you can sign on to a petition or help in some capacity. And then you'll see there's a variety of organizations that are out there working you'll want to find out about, and all sorts of videos and other things that you can archive through. Lastly, we are on the webinar page, so we're going to come back to tonight's guest. However, just to show you at the bottom of the screen here are the links. So on Monday, on all four of these channels, this video from today will be up here. Here's just a quick glance, at what was on here prior. And like I said, we're going to talk about tonight's program. So on that note, I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to let Charles be the one to do the introduction here.
Gladly, Jeff, and welcome, Robert.
Thank you, sir.
If you hear my young kids in the background, nothing I can do about that.
I've heard them before.
In fact, I'm going to be interrupted right now. Hi, Katrin. So Robert Steele is our outgoing CEO for Empowering Benefits. And we have been so excited to have him be our leader because he is a major dude nationwide in the sales world. And what's really cool about him is he was a Super Bowl finalist with the Dallas Cowboys back in the 70s, losing to my Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm sorry about that, Robert. When I was 11 years old. And since then...
Well, that's hurtful.
And since then, he has just taken the bull by the horns and just blown it up with different health ventures, non-health ventures, growing companies, selling them for millions, and such a respected sales entrepreneur that he had a wing at his alma mater, University of North Alabama, named after him, the Steele Center for Professional Sales. He actually teaches college kids how to be salespeople, and they get hired by the biggest companies across the country. And I've been in the front row seats every week over the past year or so, as he has helped us improve what we thought was already a great mousetrap. I mean, we are featured in Forbes for combining sharing and health savings accounts to make cash shopping patients. But through employee assistance around counseling and our improved concierge program, he really has really given, especially those middle-class families priced out of insurance by the ACA, a near perfect solution. And now he's moving on to a different venture, and he's staying with us as an advisor. So we're really happy that this is part of his swan song with MPB. So Jeff, that's my intro for Mr. Steele.
Very, very good. All right, I'm going to stop the sharing. I'm going to let you be front and center there. And Robert, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, sir. And Jeff or Charlie, thank you for that introduction. I got to tell you, when Rod Maxim first approached me with becoming CEO of MPB, my first reaction was, why in the heck would you want me to come in and become CEO of a company that you founded? And it was a kind of a cute moment, because he said, because you can do stuff I can't do. And at the time, I didn't actually understand it, but we all have different talents. We all have different skill sets. I mean, every single person on this call is unique. And that's what is truly makes, as we say in different circles, a horse race. You know, horses are all different. You bet on the ones that you think will win. And that's what's beautiful about the country that we live in, is we all have the ability to do creative things, make change, and as those of you that are on this call consider themselves health disruptors, I want to be a health disruptor. I hope you want to continue to be a health disruptor. And what I want to share today are going to be a handful of things that will assist you as you look at the marketplace differently. Believe it or not, the week before I interviewed with Rod for the CEO position, I met with one of Rod's colleagues, and he said, Robert, what I have learned from you and have seen you in action is that you see things differently than other people. And it actually caused me to take a pause, because I'd never had someone say that about me. And I said, you know, I appreciate you saying that, because I do try to look at things so differently and so strategically that sometimes I feel like I'm out of touch with the rest of the world. And I know that some of you on this call may feel the same way. When we want to do things that is outside the norm, some people will look at us like we're a little bit cray-cray. And yet my world is all about turning the status quo upside down and figuring out how to do things differently. So let me just pause a moment and give you a little background so that you understand where the context is coming from. I was never the best player on any football team or baseball team that I ever played on. Think about that for a moment. I've challenged a few audiences to say, you know, and I've had people raise their hands, who considered themselves the best player on the field for any team they ever played on. And I never could have raised my hand. And yet I had people in the audience raise their hand, say, I was that guy, I was that girl. And I took my hat off to them and I said, you know, that's great that you felt that way. I never felt that way. And yet I made it to the highest level of the, you know, of the sport that I played. And not because I was that great. I just kept working hard and working harder than anybody else around me. And I'm going to share a couple of stories about that, because I think it's important as we look at each of ourselves as unique individuals. And I still believe that we are all unique individuals. So when I was in college, I showed up to the University of North Alabama, weighing about 165 pounds, to play college football. That's not where you wanted to start. And I was so undeveloped. And by the way, I'm going to share this. I was so undeveloped personally and athletically that it took me 2 years to change, my dynamic. And I'm going to say, I did not study very much in high school. I thought sports was going to get me through, and it did, but I didn't study, and therefore my grades were crap. But when I got to college, I made a commitment to myself that I would make the dean's list, and I actually did make the dean's list 6 of the 8 semesters I was there. My first 2 semesters, I was terrible because I'd never studied. I never had committed myself to studying. And so fast forward, I then had 2 knee surgeries in my freshman spring, my sophomore fall. And as an athlete, you can think about this typically, and by the way, we think about Tiger Woods and the thing that has just gone on with Tiger. I had both my knees replaced in 2015 by the surgeon that operated on Tiger Woods in 2008 in Park City, Utah. So I know where Tiger's coming from. I have had 13 surgeries based on my athletic career. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm anything special. I just happened to be in a situation where I'm playing a rough sport and I got injured a lot. And typically when you get injured a lot, you don't get to play a lot. And I was fortunate enough that I was able to play through a lot of injuries. See, I equate playing through injuries as what we go through as business people. Sometimes you got to play through pain. Sometimes you got to play through adversity. Sometimes you got to play through a lost case as a salesperson. Sometimes you have to play through a situation when you didn't get the outcome that you desired. Guess what? We all go through that. And I've been through that more times probably than anybody on this call. And I'm willing to challenge that. But as I shared, I got licensed to sell insurance and be in the insurance industry when I was 19 years old. I was a sophomore in college. I was just going through my first knee surgery and knee surgery rehabilitation. And I didn't want to work construction that I had worked for the last 7 years. I wanted to actually work so that I could do my rehab and be prepared for my sophomore year in college. So I got my insurance license at 19. The funny sidebar is I sold 2 cases, and this is truly the fun part of the conversation. I sold 2 cases. I made $100 a month because of recurring revenue from my junior year, my senior year, and all through my professional football career until I moved into the insurance business full time in 1981. And then I'll tell you another story. I was the lowest paid player on the Dallas Cowboys in 1978. But let me tell you a different story. I showed up to training camp as the number 20 on the depth chart of 20 wide receivers trying to make the world champion Dallas Cowboys. No one looks at that as a positive experience except me. I looked at the depth chart the day I showed up to training camp, and I was number 20 on the depth chart of 20 with players from all over the country, from UCLA, the University of Georgia, Stanford. I mean, pick a school, they were there. And I said, wow, I'm so excited. Now, this is a little bit off, and I'll get that, but I'm so excited. I'm number 20 on the depth chart of 20, and I've got nowhere to go but up. And they all in front of me have nowhere to go but down. And when I made the Dallas Cowboys in 1978, not only did the other 19 people get cut or released, but so did a returning veteran. When I showed up to training camp, there were 4 returning veterans. The starters for Super Bowl 12, which they won, they beat Denver and New Orleans. The starters, Drew Pearson and Golden Richards, and Tony Hill and Butch Johnson. You may have heard of those names. But I was fortunate enough that I was able to not really beat out Golden Richards, but Tony Hill beat out Golden Richards. Therefore, Coach Landry decided to make a spot for me so that I could participate in special teams and other things rather than sit on the bench as Golden Richards would have done the entire season. They traded him to Chicago and made a spot for me. And so I was the only free agent out of 80 participants to make the world champion Dallas Cowboys that summer. And that's no reflection on anything other than every one of us, when we go into an endeavor, we have to go into that endeavor with a positive attitude, with an attitude of, I will take no prisoners, with an attitude that I don't care what's in front of me. I'm going to overcome every single adversity that is in front of me. And therefore, every single business endeavor, and by the way, let me share a story. I wrote an article shortly after I got released by the Cowboys and ultimately released by the Vikings. I played a season with the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm going to share a quick story about that in just a minute. But I wrote an article, What Landry, Reeves, and Ditka Taught Me About ... business. And I actually saw my time as my MBA, almost 18 months there. I saw that as my MBA, if you will, for business. And I'm happy to share that on another conversation. But at the end of the day, what I saw from the Dallas Cowboys was Tom Landry was the head coach, but he also was the CEO. Tom Landry's philosophy was he coached the coaches and he let the coaches coach the players. That's why every one of his coaches became head coaches. Dan Reeves, Mike Ditka, Gene Stallings, I can name more, but those are the guys who ended up coaching at the professional level because they were mentored under Coach Landry. And so when I got out of sports, I decided I was going to dedicate my career to changing the game for health insurance and life insurance and other insurance products. And I became a CLU, I became a CHFC. And I became technology focused because I saw technology as the way to really drive change within a marketplace. So when Rod Maxson asked me to become CEO, I had to do some soul searching because I couldn't even spell medical cost sharing at the time. No kidding, true story. I didn't know what medical cost sharing was. But I'm a person that loves to dig in. People say, well, you're just a sales guy. By the way, and Charlie, thanks for the introduction. I'm very proud of the Steele Center for Professional Sales at the University of North Alabama. We have 125 students. We graduate 25 a year, and 100% of those students that have gotten a degree get 100% job offers and job placement, not just job offers, job placement when they graduate. 100%. So I am proud of that. But the reason for the story is that in our world, what we need to be doing is not only paying it forward, but also creating that legacy that ultimately will outlive each of us. Because again, there's only one person that's come out alive in this whole world, and it ain't been you and I, and no one else on this call. And so I know that, that we're going to not necessarily be here, for the end of time. But what I do know is that when I look at the medical cost sharing world, from a standpoint of truly being a health disruptor, I'm going to go back to 2010. So if you don't mind, I'm going to digress for just a moment. In 2010, what happened? We passed the Affordable Care Act. What happened was a significant game changer, not for the consumer that it was supposed to be. What was the Affordable Care Act supposed to be? It was supposed to be about making healthcare more accessible and more affordable. Does anybody on this call believe that either of those two things happened? If I could ask you to raise your hands, tell me which one of you believe that healthcare became more accessible and more affordable. None of us believe that, and nor did it happen. Why? Well, let me tell you. A little fact known as MLR, medical loss ratio. The insurance companies were against the Affordable Care Act for the longest time. When MLR was introduced, they got on board. Why do you think they got on board? And by the way, if we're healthcare disruptors, we got to know this story. Why did they get involved? Because MLR said that we had to pay out 80% for small group, 85% for large group. Out of our premiums, we had to pay 80% of the premiums out of, as claims and as reimbursements. What happened? Healthcare premiums doubled and doubled and doubled. Because let's do a simple math equation. If premium is $100 and you have to pay out $80, you get $20 to keep for all 100% of your business expenses, including profit, including, $10 million, $15 million, $20 million CEO salaries. You got 20 cents in the dollar to pay for that. So what you care about is how do we get the premiums up higher every single year in order to accommodate MLR? Because they don't, I'm not saying they don't care. I'm not sure they do care for managing healthcare expense because they only get 20 cents to spend on themselves and 80% out of everything else. So given that, we're at a disadvantage under the Affordable Care Act. So when Rod, and I'd already been studying this, so when Rod asked me to come in and be CEO of Empowering Benefits, I said, you know what, let me think about that for a moment. And I did, I pondered on that. And then I said, you know what, we got to change how we purchase healthcare, and we got to change how we purchase health insurance. And so I've been working on that for the last 2 years. And there is no question that medical cost sharing is an ability for an individual consumer and even a small employer to change how you purchase health care, and you eliminate health insurance because you become a cash paying customer of not a health insurance company, but a medical cost sharing membership. And I'm happy to go if anyone wants to ever have a conversation with myself or Charlie or anybody else. We can share with you the dynamics of this, but I'm going to give you one case in point, no other story. In December of 2019, my first cousin reached out to me and said, Robert, I've been reading your post on LinkedIn and Facebook and everywhere else. And I'm in Mobile, Alabama, and my wife and myself and our 5 kids are currently paying $2,100 a month. And Blue Cross Alabama just said, we're going to $2,800 a month. And I can't afford that. I'm literally trying to feed the family. I cannot do this anymore. I said, Brad, what do you want to do? He says, well, I'm just telling you, I've already canceled my Blue Cross Alabama product. I said, well, that was not the smartest thing to do because you got exposure. He said, I know, but I'm relying on you to help me. So we moved him from a $2,800 a month premium to a $685 a month premium that fully took care of all of his both initial and catastrophic needs. Actually, once he met his initial unshareable amount. And again, I can get into great detail about all of those factors, but here's what you need to know. When you have a $2,800 a month premium times 12 is a little more than $32,000. You add a $5,000 deductible. That's $35,000, $36,000, $37,000 before you get anything back. Who wants to sign up for that program? Not me. Who would do that in their right mind as a business person? Actually, no one. And so when you present the alternative of $685 versus $35,000 and $1,000 IUA, it is absolutely a no-brainer. And so the medical cost sharing model for individuals, 1099s, gig economy, small business, anyone that says, I can't take it anymore. This is an opportunity to do just that. I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not going to spend half my paycheck on a health plan that is not serving my needs. What I need to do is do something dramatically different. And that is purchasing health care differently and purchasing health insurance differently through various alternatives that, I now support wholeheartedly. And by the way, I couldn't spell medical cost sharing. I couldn't spell health sharing prior to becoming CEO, but I'm a person that is a student of the game. But I'll go back to my football days. I saw Tom Landry as the consummate CEO. He coached the coaches. He let the coaches coach the players. Dan Reeves, who was my offensive coordinator, was the consummate student of the game. He wanted to study every play. He wanted to study every tendency. He wanted to study every component of every opponent so that he knew what to do when a play or a defense or an opportunity arose. And Mike Ditka, on the other hand, was the passionate, crazy person. And I mean that in all due respect. He was crazy. He wanted to run through the wall and he expected you to run through the wall with him. I was willing to do that because he was my coach. And so, but that's what I learned from the Dallas Cowboys. And I apply all of that in my business career, because what happens is, as I look at healthcare and I look at insurance, and let me just pause a moment. I'll share one thing with you. What I've learned over my literally, I hate to say this, almost 50 years of being in the insurance business, I'm really scared to say that. I have learned that the average consumer doesn't understand insurance. The average consumer doesn't understand healthcare. They don't understand employee benefits, and they damn sure don't understand financial services. And by the way, I'm not being judgmental here. It's not what they do every day. Insurance is what I do every day. So when someone comes to me and is struggling with a concept or an approach, my job is to teach them, hold their hand, and talk to them in what I call the Reader's Digest 6th grade level approach. Because that's what the majority of us understand when we're dealing with concepts we don't understand. And that's how I've tried to position all of the MPB products for the consumer to understand and feel like they've gotten a support mechanism behind them. And that really is what I think. When I became a part of MPB, I realized that medical cost sharing is a great product with limitations. We needed to supplement those limitations with products that met our members' needs. And I believe very strongly we've done just that. And so, given that, as I said earlier, in order to change healthcare, in order to change MLR, in order to change how we consume healthcare, you got to do things dramatically differently. You got to be a disruptor. You got to purchase health insurance differently. You got to purchase health care differently. And we've got programs that can do just that. And by the way, Charlie, I appreciate talking about my swan song, if you will. This will be my last presentation as CEO of MPB. I don't know if you've seen this on LinkedIn or Facebook, but I just got appointed or anointed, whatever you want to call it, as the top CEO for an organization called the International Association of Top Professionals. And so they named me CEO of the year because of what I've accomplished at MPB in my time there. And again, this is not something I take lightly. I feel good about the work that I've done, but I didn't accomplish everything I wanted to accomplish. I accomplished the things that I felt like needed to be done so that the advisors and our members would be well taken care of as long as they're around. And that really is what excites me. So again, I wanted to have, I didn't want to have a presentation. By the way, I hate PowerPoint. I don't know about you guys, but I hate PowerPoint. I don't want to talk to a PowerPoint because that means that it's scripted. And I'm not a scripted kind of guy. I love talking. It's like a black pastor, a friend of mine from Columbus said to me one day. We were talking outside of his church one day, and he said, I had this lady come up to me and said, Pastor Flakes, how long did you prepare for that sermon? And she said, I think that's the best sermon I think I've ever heard. And he said, 47 years. Well, no pastor, practices or prepares for 47 years. He defined that by saying, I was preaching from the overflow. And so I actually took that to heart. And Charlie, you've heard me speak 100 times, I think. And I would tell you that most of the time I'm preaching from the overflow. So with that, guys, I'm going to open the floor up for questions. I'm happy to answer any and every question. Some of the answers you may not like, some of the answers you may not agree with, some of the answers you may say he's crazy. But I'm going to give you what I believe is the truth and what is going on in our industry and how we're going to change that industry. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. And I see we have some chat.
Stuff's going on indeed. Yes, Charles has got his hand up here right away. So let's see what he has for you.
Robert, it's fantastic. And I love that concept to speak from your overflow and your life experience and just kind of get that gut check for the moment and let it fly. On that idea of helping the customer understand what's going on, because insurance and healthcare are confusing. I want you to compare this dynamic of sharing to insurance to the dynamic of credit unions to banks. I think more people are comfortable going into credit unions as opposed to banks. We're trying to make sharing as comfortable for people as that, I think, to consider sharing as your protective mechanism, not just insurance. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. In fact, I believe very strongly that if the gig economy and all of those that are either suffering from the high cost of healthcare would look at medical cost sharing as a legitimate, and I'll say legitimate alternative, because we have insurance commissioners across this country that are fighting this tooth and nail. Let's talk about that. Let's just talk about that for a minute, Charlie. Why would an insurance commissioner fight medical cost sharing? We're a gnat on their scale, are we not?
Yeah, just like credit unions are to banks to a certain extent.
That is 100% correct. So if we're a gnat, why would they care about us? They care about us because we have the ability to be the biggest impact, because guess what? We get to sell across state lines. We're not controlled by the Department of Insurance in a particular state. And in fact, we're starting to market an ERISA plan that is similar to self-funded, if you're familiar with ERISA, and we're starting to market an ERISA plan, which will allow employers with 20 or more employees to have basically the same approach to healthcare as medical cost sharing, with a more structured approach, more controlled approach, and also more secure approach, and because it's on an ERISA chassis. And I'm happy to talk about that at the end of the conversation if we have time. But actually, let me stop for a minute. Jared, can I ask you a question? What do you mean by not a chance?
Oh, that was in response to your comment about healthcare getting cheaper and more affordable to the Affordable Care Act and that type of stuff.
Oh, no, I said it's not going to be a cheaper or a more affordable. It's not I mean, so I
was agreeing with you. I was agreeing with you.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. So Greg Cole, can you tell me what you mean about pigs flying?
Oh, sorry, let me unmute. Oh, no, yeah, healthcare is cheaper. Yeah, and pigs are flying. I'm agreeing with you as well.
Okay, sorry. So I was concerned that you were challenged, and by the way, I am willing to be challenged. I love being challenged, but I was concerned about that. So thank you for that. And so John Taylor, thanks for sharing about the chief disincentivizer. So I appreciate that. So Charlie, I saw that you did that. And so, yeah, so the credit union. So by the way, I do support the credit union analogy because I love local. By the way, if when you think of politics, and Charlie, we got in a little bit of an interesting conversation on our last call that we talked about politics. Politics is all local. A credit union is a local organization. And I got pissed off. And let me just say it clearly. I got pissed off at my banking relationships. And I'm banking at Wells Fargo today. And I hate Wells Fargo, by the way. Let me just say, I hate Wells Fargo because they don't give a shit about me. Sorry for my language. They do not care about me. And I keep a significant amount of money in their bank. Significant. For the last 20 years. And they do not care about me. And so the issue is that they have changed from being that community bank and being the relationship bank to being a nothing bank. And credit unions are the alternative, and they're the medical cost sharing alternative to traditional insurance. So I do support that. So I'm glad that we had that conversation. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, we have our documentarian, Paul Roberts, here. So he's done that diagnosing healthcare. So let's see what his commentary is. Paul, if you would.
Yeah, well, just first of all, Robert, great presentation. Great to meet you as well. And thank you again for sharing your background. It helps to kind of put that story into context. Yeah, so my comment, and perhaps it's a comment, perhaps it's a question, but one of the things that kind of concerns me, and by the way, just to say, I'm very much an advocate for cost sharing. I've got a portion of that in the film, and I'm out there on the street advocating, and recruiting folks into the cost sharing arena. So I'm an advocate, but my concern is, it's not insurance, and it's my understanding because it's not insurance, it's not reinsurable. We can't have a umbrella policy covering like a reinsurance policy for the cost sharing program. So my concern because of that, I guess I'm just looking at resources. If somebody has catastrophic injuries and complex catastrophic kind of stuff going on, at a certain point when we drive in more members, I mean, right now it's maybe up 1 million or so, but as we get into multi-millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of patients, coming into the system, are you guys concerned at all that there's no, reinsurance policy or, umbrella policy for this type of catastrophic stuff?
By the way, having been a TPA in my life, and having sold self-funded health plans, administered self-funded health plans, and knowing very significant, issues around the specific and aggregate, specific deductible aggregate stop loss. One of the reasons that I moved MPB from Sedera to Zion is that they were moving towards having a reinsurance arrangement to protect them. and they are at that. I also market Redirect Health, which has just structured a reinsurance arrangement and actually just got certified. That's probably not the best term, but they actually just got accredited, I think is the better term, in Utah for their health plans and the reinsurance that supports their health plans. And so while I do believe that every medical cost sharing organization, and again, I split the hairs here, there is a significant difference between a health sharing organization and a medical cost sharing organization, at least in my mind's eye. And that is that, and by the way, no disrespect to the faith-based organizations called health sharing, it's the fact that they actually don't commit, if you will, to taking care of every need every single day. The medical cost sharing organizations will not turn you down as the health sharing organizations will. You can have significant pre-existing conditions and the medical cost sharing organizations will actually take you on as a member. That's significant to me. And so, again, I'm not trying to, strain a gnat here, but my point is that I respect your position about needing that support. But if you really if you got into the bowels of every insurance company's contract, they don't tell you they're going to pay every claim every time at 100%, do they?
Right.
No, they don't say that. They say they're going to pay it, within the guidelines of their parameters. And if that's the case, then why do you think there's so many balanced bills around the world and has caused so many people to end up filing bankruptcy because of balanced bills?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So anyway, I'm not sure I 100% answered it, but I support any medical cost sharing organization that has the backing of a reinsurance approach, whether that be a reinsurance, agreement or some other charter that allows them to have the ability to keep their promises. I'm all about keeping my promises. As long as we keep our promises, we're good. And if we don't keep our promises, we're bad.
I agree.
And I will hold every vendor that we have in our portfolio, I will hold them to task if they don't keep their promises. And Charlie, I've done that.
And rightfully so. John, I saw you had your hand up.
Oh, yep. Thanks, Jeff. For some reason, my hand got put back down. I don't know.
Oh, I put it down when I was about to call on you, but then somebody continued to talk. So sorry. Go ahead.
All right. Robert, thank you very much. I have to say, you got me really pumped up sitting here, and I'm drinking decaf coffee too. So I don't know, but it's because I also really consider myself a healthcare heretic. When you said when people tell you that you're cray-cray, maybe you're doing the right thing. And that's exactly how I felt, for years. I'm approaching it from the provider side. I'm a solo practitioner, plastic surgery. So I've been dealing with these lousy insurers for years. But you're kind of looking at this sort of direct pay model from the consumer side. For years, I've been looking about, how we can do it from the provider side. And I think it really needs to be done on a much larger scale, than it is now. We have these small pockets around, like the Oklahoma Surgery Center, which is doing a fantastic job.
By the way, fantastic job. And if we could replicate that all over the country in pockets, I would become a crazy person for that.
Yeah. Now they're just dealing with the surgical part of it, but I think we really need a large, comprehensive service provider that is really focused on primary care, which is really, I think, the most important thing to bring, healthcare benefit costs down, to really put that focus on primary care, and then referring out to the specialties. And especially now with so many large, self-insured employers that you're familiar with that are looking for savings on their benefits, I think it's becoming even more and more important to direct them to something like this, more of a direct contracting and payment, direct from patient to provider. Just cut out all of the middlemen, the insurers, but also the government, Medicare and Medicaid. I think this sort of model has to completely be outside of the Medicare and Medicaid system. Number one, to just remove itself from a lot of the regulation that comes along with that, just by not being a provider that accepts that, and insurance, except for maybe, just catastrophic. So, me just being a solo guy here on the Jersey Shore, I can't do it all by myself, so I was really upset when I woke up one Monday morning and opened up the Wall Street Journal and saw that the Haven project was shut down, because I had really big hopes, for that, because to me, it looked like they had all the right pieces. Amazon has all the resources, the financial and the physical resources. JP Morgan Chase, they have the financial instruments that can be created to make that direct payment between patient and provider much easier. Berkshire Hathaway has the reinsurance products, if they need that. And I don't know if maybe they were just looking at it the wrong way. Atul Gawande is kind of like sort of a liberal Harvard guy. So I don't know if he was kind of, looking at trying to create this within the existing system. But, I'm a firm believer in what Buckminster Fuller said, is that you never change things by fighting the existing reality. In order to change something, you have to build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So I think we need to build something outside of the existing model.
So Dr. Taylor, I'm going to say kudos to you for saying that. If you look at Jeff Bezos, he has never looked at anything and said, oh, let's just keep doing what we've been doing. We'll just do it a little bit better. Did he say that? No. He said, we're going to fundamentally change how everything is done. And by the way, Haven coulda, shoulda, woulda. It didn't. Why? Because you had three mammoth organizations. Let me give you a case in point. In 2006, I was with a little company called Ingenix, which was the healthcare technology subsidiary of a little company called United Healthcare. And this little company called Intuit partnered with UHG, United Health Group, to build Quicken for Health. Now, John, I'm telling you shit that, no one would know. But they partnered together to build Quicken for Health. And they should have been successful because Intuit is the number one marketer for every product. Let me tell you this. Intuit is the number one marketer for every product they've ever launched except one. You know what that one was? Quicken for Health. Mm-hmm. Because they partnered with United Health Group. You had two behemoth organizations who took 45 days to schedule a meeting. I was on the lead of that product, by the way, and I pulled the entire Blue Cross organization together to adopt the Quicken for Health model. And what they were going to do was basically take the EOB's explanation of benefits into a model where they could actually manage every EOB in the country. It could have been cool as shit. Let me just tell you that. And a buddy of mine, Bob Gretchen, former CEO of Blue Cross North Carolina, said, Robert, I love what you're trying to do, but we're not ever as Blue with our Blue Health Intelligence, BHI, 100 million member database going to do anything with United Healthcare, ever. I said, but Bob, no, Robert, shut up. We're not going to do that. He said, set me up a meeting with the CEO of Intuit, and I want to meet with him. And I set that up. And Bob Gretchen said to the CEO of Intuit, I will bring you 100 million members for Quicken for Health if you will let me have a standalone system outside of UHG. And you know what Quicken said, or Intuit said? Can't do it. So Bob Gretchen said, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. Quicken for Health was shelved 2 years later. Not because it wasn't a great idea. It was because Blue Cross pulled their 100 million members. Haven was similarly situated, and I can give you hundreds of cases, John, that happened similarly. Haven was a great idea. It should have been rock star status, and it didn't. It failed because of the infrastructure that we have. Jeff Bezos does it differently, and I like what he said. By the way, let me share another one with you. When Howard Schultz says that I spend more on healthcare than I do on coffee, that says a lot to me. And I hope each and one of you that hear this hear that as well. Starbucks doesn't sell coffee. They sell experience. But coffee is the byproduct that sells that experience. And when he says he spends more on healthcare than he does coffee, that's a scary proposition, is it not?
Yeah.
We're not going to do this the way we've been doing it, guys. If we want to be healthcare disruptors, we got to be healthcare disruptors. We got to turn it up on its ear. We got to be Jeff Bezos times 12. We got to have Jeff Bezos's 30-minute meetings. We can't have 3-hour meetings. He's only had one 3-hour meeting in his life. And that was when he created AWS.
Yeah. So Robert, let me ask you, if they couldn't do it, how are we going to do it? Because we can't keep doing what we're doing now. It's just not sustainable. I mean, we just have to change it.
John, I'm gonna tell you exactly when I looked at that depth chart and I was number 20 on the depth chart of 20. What would you have done if you were on the depth chart number 20 out of 20? What would you have done?
I'll clawed my way up.
I absolutely cinched by the inch, far too hard by the yard, my friend.
Yeah.
So let's go get in the trenches and let's go change this one rung at the time, and never, as Winston Churchill said, ever, never, ever, never, ever, never, ever, never give up.
Yeah. So you think it'll be more like small pockets, like Oklahoma Surgery Center, just popping up around the country?
Times 10. Yes, sir. I do. And it's people like you and I and everybody on this call that says, we're tired of this. We're not going to take it anymore.
Yeah.
Charles, I'm going to let you slip in the last question because we've fast run out of time here tonight, unfortunately.
Oh, I was going to put people on the spot because there's so many heavy hitters here that I would love to hear questions, Robert, like Robert Staubel or David Westbrook. If either of them want to make a comment, because they're definitely disruptors.
All right, if they want to jump in, please unmute yourself.
I would love to make a comment.
Go right
Dr.
for
Westbrook, go ahead.
I've heard a lot about insurance, reinsurance, health sharing. There are two things that I want to bring up. First of all, there's a difference between medicine and health. We're talking about medical care. You said it. You said healthcare savings are health sharing versus medical sharing. And that's the crux of the matter. What I haven't heard and what I think is the absolute most important thing is something that is not a new paradigm. It's an old paradigm that worked when I started in medical practice in 1977. And that is called the doctor-patient relationship. Now, my company, which is, I will admit, fledgling right now, I still have to capitalize it, but what it's going to take advantage of is putting the doctor and the patient back in charge. Cost is going to be very important, but the relationship between the doctor and the patient is tantamount. something that I experienced early in my practice, and I continue to do, hopefully, for the remainder of my practice. The one hurdle I hit that made it very difficult was when insurance became the most important part of the equation. When that happened, medical care, I'm not talking about health care, I'm not talking about, well care and all this other stuff that's being sold. I'm talking about taking care of sick people, taking care of people who have chronic disorders and making them better, making their lives better. Now, again, I could go on and on because I'm not scripted on this either. But I will tell you that there is no plan. I don't care whether it's Amazon or I don't care if it's Elon Musk. If they don't understand what is important, which is the doctor-patient relationship, it's not going to work. So my program is dedicated to concentrating on the doctor and the patient as being the critical, important link in this. Nothing is going to work until you do that.
Dr. Westbrook, I'm going to agree with you wholeheartedly. In fact, the majority of my work has been in the last 2 years to support a direct primary care model where you put the physician and the patient at the forefront of that care. And if you don't do that, you're going to fail every single time.
Jared, I'm going to let you slip in one last comment here.
Yeah, I think that, John and Robert were going back and forth a little bit about, why Amazon got out of the game and what have you. You mentioned that cost sharing is kind of like the credit union compared to the large business banks. I mean, reality is freeing physicians from the corporate stronghold, freeing them from employment and getting them back to small business practices and partnering with those folks is where we become victorious, right? I mean, that's where the revolution occurs. And that's where I think sharing has the grassroots to burn everything to the ground and take over personally.
And to close on that comment, Robert, would you not say that you've seen that these direct primary care physicians actually are happier doctors and they actually make more money being back in private practice and escaping the clutches of the Cleveland clinics of the world?
So the medical community has as high a suicide rate as any other, I mean, even higher than the PTSD soldiers that are coming back from war. So think about that for a minute, guys. These are professionals that have a higher suicide rate than, soldiers. That's scary. That's terrible. We got to change that. And the answer is taking out all the crap and putting it back into a patient-physician relationship that says, I want to do what's right by the patient. I want to do no harm. That's the Hippocratic Oath. I want to do no harm. And if they do no harm, then they're going to do the right thing every single time. That's really what I think we should be striving for. And it's going to be a holistic approach. And that's what I love about the conversation we're having is it's going to have to be a paradigm shift, a holistic approach, and let's put the financial incentives where they belong. And right now they don't belong inside the health insurance companies.
Very good. That's the perfect place to end it. So, Robert, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, guys.